On this week's Political Figure episode, we've got the answer to the question as to why brains are better than brawn. Because we're talking about Mike Braun, and most things in that case are better than brawn. Mike Braun was born March 24th, 1954 in Jasper, Indiana. He graduated from Jasper High School, where he was a star athlete in all of the sports things, and then he married his high school sweetheart, who was also a cheerleader, before going to Wabasha College, an all-men's college where he joined a fraternity because he is literally the most cliche thing from the 1950s you could imagine. He then got his MBA from Harvard before returning to Indiana to go work for his father's truck body manufacturing business. Then when Reagan's shitty economic policies basically ruined all family farms in the 1980s, it almost ruined their business too because most of their customers were farmers. And while those experiences didn't seem to teach him anything about economic policies, they did pivot from selling truck bodies to truck accessories. Because no matter how bad the economy is, Jim Bob will still spend money to put truck nuts on his trailer hitch. Truck accessories are just recession-proof. That's science. Mike is still president and CEO of the company today, and it's estimated that he's worth around $100 million. And when rich people get rich, it seems that they get bored of telling people on their payroll what to do, so then they run for public office because they seem to think that they are, whatever reason, qualified to tell us all what to do while we pay for their shitty leadership and bad ideas. Mike Braun is no different. After serving on the school board for a little while, in 2014 he was elected to the Indiana State House of Representatives. However, he didn't do much there, and he resigned in 2017 to run for U.S. Senate. And with the help of nearly $3 million from Russian-born money launderer Lev Parnas, he was able to win his Senate campaign. And in the Senate, he's just kind of been an all-around dick. Right away, he voted against a bipartisan emergency aid package for states that have been affected by hurricanes, floods, and fires. Because, we got to rein in the spending, and obviously people who are suffering from natural disasters are the first place we should start reining that in. He was a big fan and supporter of Trump abandoning our Kurdish allies in Syria. After Trump lost the election, he was an election results denier and was part of the effort to block states which Trump lost from having their electoral votes counted. Though he did finally vote to certify the election after the Treason Tribe tried overthrowing democracy by overrunning the Capitol that he was still currently inside of. Of course, even with that, he didn't vote for the first impeachment of Donald Trump or the second impeachment of Donald Trump, and he abstained from the formation of the January 6th committee vote. Although, to be fair, despite him voting to acquit, he was at least a little bit more critical of Trump's actions in Ukraine than the majority of his cohort, though his words, as usual, were pretty hollow. Moving on, when it comes to economic and budgetary issues, he's always been a big talker about how he's a fiscal conservative and believes in free market trade. And then he turned around and went full knee pads for Trump's trade and economic policies, like supporting his trade war that, restricted the free market trade Mikey said he was all about. Then he supported the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, saying it was revenue neutral. It wasn't. It never was. By any stretch of the imagination or any math that anybody could ever do would have made that revenue neutral. In fact, it's so not revenue neutral, it's adding $1.5 trillion to the deficit. He hates people having health care and has supported overturning the ACA. He did say he wanted to make sure people with pre-existing conditions were still protected, and then he turned around and voted for the amendments that would make it so people with pre-existing conditions would have no longer been protected. He also really hates women and the fact that they have healthcare. So much so that when Roe got overturned, he described his feelings as excited that old white men like him could finally write laws to tell women what they were and weren't allowed to do with their bodies again. Just like the good old days when women weren't people the way God intended. Speaking of hating people, he thinks the God in his Bible he's never actually read also hates. He doesn't like the gays very much either. He said he believes in traditional marriage, by which I can only assume he means he's a big fan of transactional arranged marriages designed to increase political alliances and social status. Oh, sorry, I hadn't read far enough yet. That's not what he meant. Turns out he's just a bigot. As an Indiana state rep, he fought to keep the definition of marriage as between a man and a woman. He also fought hard for the rights of Indiana residents to be able to indiscriminately discriminate against gay people if gay people existing makes them feel icky. His views on immigration policy pretty much start and end with a pointless wall. That's his words. He said building the wall must be the first step to any solution on immigration. He's also a big fan of deporting undocumented immigrants who came here as children. Often known as dreamers, he is a big fan of removing any path to citizenship that they may have because fuck them kids. But hey, despite his bigotry against women and members of the LGBTQ community and immigrants, at least he's also a racist as well. Because he said that the Supreme Court's ruling of Loving versus Virginia in 1967, the ruling that outlawed interracial marriage bans, he said that ruling was wrong. Which is a bold opinion to have about a Supreme Court ruling from 1967 that I think by now pretty much everybody agrees was, the right ruling. But hey, at least his bigotry is consistent. It's not like he's just picking on the women or the Mexicans or the gays. He's a full spectrum, equal opportunity discriminator. Whether you're black or brown, female or fabulous, Mike Braun believes in his right to hate all of you equally. And you gotta respect that. I'm kidding, you don't have to and should not respect that. Dude is straight up trash. But hey, everybody has some redeeming qualities, right? Sometimes you just gotta dig really, 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 really really deep down to find them. Like, for example, after police murdered George Floyd, Mike introduced some legislation to reform qualified immunity for police officers so they can't get away with murder as easily. But then the police union and his party got mad at him for having a spine momentarily. He's like, sorry guys, it was a moment of weakness. Let me pull that thing back out of here. Because then he dropped his bill and made an official statement saying he opposed any reform to the current doctrine of qualified immunity. Because he's a lil bitch. But on a surprising note, he's at least not a climate change denier, so that's cool. He's praised Greta and said she's an inspiration for the environmental work that she's doing. He supports reforestation and carbon pricing. He's on the Climate Solutions Caucus, and he's urged his party to take more decisive action on climate change. At this point, more decisive action would be his party simply acknowledging that science is real, so we got a ways to go there. And he's supported some green farming agriculture policy as well. Despite all that, he's still opposed to the Paris Climate Accord for some reason, and the League of Conservation voters have given him an 11% lifetime rating. But hey, simply denying that 99.9% of scientists are all in on some global conspiracy about climate change may be a low bar, but at least he cleared that one, and sometimes that's all we can ask. Thankfully, Mike is jumping ship this year from the Senate to pursue a shot at the governor's mansion of Indiana, which means those of us not in Indiana won't have to deal with his bullshit anymore, which is nice. But if Mike wins the primary for governor, which is likely, there's a good chance that Indiana will be stuck with a governor who is a racist, sexist, homophobic multimillionaire whose only redeeming quality is that he believes that the temperature outside is real, which, to be fair, is one more redeeming quality than the past couple governors they've had, but still not great. Now, that said, if he does get to that point, it looks like he'll be challenged by Jennifer McCormick. Jennifer was the Republican superintendent for Indiana, but in 2021, she switched party. Why? I mean, she's an educator and Republican are oxymorons. Aside from that, and her being critical of some of the Republican Party's platforms, I haven't found a real great, clear answer as to why she switched parties. She still seems about as conservative as somebody who was a Republican 3 years ago, but I still have enough brain where I would choose her over Braun for anything, any day. And hopefully Indiana does as well.